Welcome to Basic Brewing Radio for Thursday, May 19th, 2011. I'm James Spencer. Here at Basic Brewing Radio, we're all about home brewing. With this week playing with Cyser, Mead, and yeast. Steve and I sample Cyser and Mead from home brewer Dave Scheuing. Dave sent us a Cyser made with Belgian ale yeast and two Meads, one with a dry yeast and one with a sweet yeast. A very tasty show. If you're new to home brewing and would like to get into the hobby for the first time, check out our website, basicbrewing.com, where you can find archives of our audio and video podcasts and our DVDs to walk you through basic and more advanced brewing techniques. You can find our brewers' logbooks as well to help you log and track 50 batches of beer. You can follow me on Twitter. My username is Basic Brewing, all one word. Also, you can find me on Facebook at facebook.com/basicbrewing.james. And our show page on Facebook is at facebook.com/basicbrewing. Thanks again to everybody clicking on the Amazon.com associate link on our basicbrewing.com site. Whenever you think of Amazon, think of us and click on our associate link first. It won't cost you any extra, and you'll be helping us to bring you this show, and we greatly appreciate your support. We also have associate links for Brew Your Own magazine and the American Homebrewers Association on our site, too. And you can find our Basic Brewing iPhone and Android podcast apps on their respective stores. And we're on the BlackBerry podcast directory now, too. The deadline to send in your data for the Brew Your Own magazine Basic Brewing Radio Collaborative Experiment on Glassware has come and gone, and we got a good showing. Thanks very much to Jonathan in Smith Falls, Ontario, Scott in Detroit, Tom in Charlottesville, Virginia, Zot in Seattle, Brian in Lyle, Minnesota, Danny in Gainesville, Florida, Greg in Fort Collins, Colorado, Richard and Debbie in Oklahoma City, and Christopher in Louisville, Kentucky. So if you didn't hear your name, or if you sent in data and didn't hear your name, please let me know, and we will get you in there. We very much appreciate your taking part to participate, and we'll be digesting the data and reporting back to you next week. Speaking of next week's show will be the last before the June break. We always take the month of June off from podcasting, from posting podcast episodes, although we will be hard at work for part of that time, though. I hope to see you out in San Diego for the National Homebrewers Conference. It's sold out, by the way, so it should be a doozy. Let's look in the mailbag. Dave saw the Basic Brewing video episode with Steve and me, where we expressed our displeasure that beer wasn't going to be served at one of the royal wedding receptions because it wasn't a proper beverage to be in the presence of the Queen. And Dave says, beer may not have been served at the recent wedding reception, but Prince Charles, next in line to the throne, is involved with the Duchy Originals brand and produces a range of fine organic ales. Please don't side with the French just yet. Ah, yes, but this just in. Take this into consideration. The Queen, when she was touring a Guinness facility in Ireland this week, turned up her nose when she was offered a pint of Guinness. Someone poured her a pint specifically for her, slid it across the bar, and she kind of looked at it and walked away. Now, in my mind, that's rude. If someone pours me a beer, unless I'm allergic to alcohol or have a problem with alcohol or, have some religious objections or something like that, if someone pours me a beer, even if it's a Bud Light, I'm going to pick it up, especially if I'm on camera in front of the world, and give a little sip and say thank you. It just seems polite. Jeff writes from Tennessee that the state legislature there is considering a bill that would allow brewers in that state, professional brewers in that state, to brew higher gravity beers. Right now, I believe they're limited to 5% ABV. But that's good news. However, Jeff says apparently there are amendments to the legislation that may screw things up. So I'll spare the details because it's all up in the air at this point. But let's just say I hope they get their act together and write some legislation that will free up all the brewers in Tennessee soon to brew beers that are bigger and tasty. Phil from Boston writes, I have a quick question that I haven't ever really heard a good answer to. Does it matter whether or not you strain the hops out of the wort going into the primary fermentation? I think the books recommend straining it, and I always see the big strainers at the homebrew store. I do all my hop additions with loose pellet hops thrown directly into the boil, and I don't strain the wort on the way to the primary fermenter. It all settles out, and I'm generally happy with my beers. Should I bother with that extra step? Maybe I should divide a batch in half and do it both ways. Well, yeah, first of all, it sounds like a good thing. Second, if you're generally happy with your beers, you're doing something right. But the question is, I guess, can they be better? It sounds like a great idea for an experiment, and I sort of may be doing it right now, accidentally. For the other Brew Your Own Magazine, Basic Brewing Radio collaborative experiment that we're doing currently, the dry yeast rehydration experiment, I brewed a hoppy pale ale. I know that's a shock, but a hoppy pale ale extract beer, and with lots of hops, and I split the wort by racking off half of it into one fermenter, and then the second half into a second fermenter. And the second half of the wort got a lot more hop debris than the first half. So we may see the effects of that. I brewed with more and less hop trub in the fermenter, and, the beers seem to turn out good either way. But the question is, which is better? And, maybe we will find out. If we don't find out through this experiment, maybe that'll be another collaborative experiment. Now, I am planning another brew to get more data for the yeast rehydration experiment. And by the way, the deadline for that experiment is July 15th. So don't forget, while we're away in June, I won't be around to pester you, to remember you, to do those, do that experiment. So start yours now. Pitch dry yeast onto some wort and rehydrate the same amount of yeast onto an identical batch of wort, or as identical as you can get it, and record your results. Okay, let's get into the meat of the matter, or maybe the mead of the matter. Dave Scheuing has been playing with Cyser, Mead, and different yeasts over the past 3 years, and he sent us some samples of his work. And Steve and I got together with Dave to have a taste. Well, Dave Scheuing, welcome to Basic Brewing Radio.
Well, thanks for having me, James.
And here in the studio, we have Steve Wilkes.
As usual. I'm always Steve Wilkes.
But you're not always here.
Sometimes I'm not always here, but
it seems like you're always here.
I'll be here tomorrow.
You will if we drink too much of this stuff.
That's for sure.
You'll be on the couch.
So what are we going to do?
Well, we're going to talk about ciders and Cysers and meads and playing with different yeasts and just experimenting. It's been a long time since we've talked about ciders.
Yep.
And meads on the podcast, and Dave was kind enough to send us some results of his experimentations, and so we're going to sample those and talk a bit about the process and talk a bit about his brewing practice. Although I don't know, do you brew ciders and meads, or do you just make them? I don't know. What do you think, Dave?
I think just let them ferment. Mix everything in that you're going to add, and just add the yeast and let them go.
That sounds like my pizza formula. just put some yeast in and let it go.
So, but these are beautiful looking in the bottle. What should we start with? We got a Cyser. Should we start with the Cyser?
I think we should. Definitely.
What do you think, Dave?
Well, there's more of the Cyser, so I think you should start there.
Okay.
Well, I should tell you that we're not going to drink all of what's here. I got my corker up from the basement so that we can, put the cork back in and put it back in the fridge because Steve's got to drive home.
No, I'm staying.
Oh, or he may be staying on the couch, or my wife may be driving him home. I'm not sure, but we're going to be safe.
That's right.
But we also don't want to blow out our palates here.
No, we don't.
So a Cyser is almost a cider and almost a mead, right?
Yes, it's a cider. Well, it's technically a mead with apple. So this one's kind of a Cyser in that it's mostly apple cider with a little bit of honey and brown sugar added to it.
Ooh.
So it looks beautiful.
So can you give us a little bit of insight on your recipe?
Sure. I made a 5-gallon batch, and it was 5 gallons of just sweet cider that I got from the local cider mill. And to that, I added 3 pounds of brown sugar and 3 pounds of clover honey. And the interesting, I found this recipe online on one of the home brewing boards, and the interesting thing that attracted me to the recipe was that it used a Belgian ale yeast as to ferment. So specifically, I used yeast Belgian Ardennes in this recipe.
Now, did you use a starter with this, or did you just pitch the yeast itself?
I just pitched the yeast itself, but what I did do was I used staggered nutrient addition to sort of power the fermentation through. Mm-hmm. And if nobody's familiar with that, it's on honeyhomebrewheaven.com, and it's basically a regimented addition of superfood, firm K, and DAP to the must as it's fermenting, and it's done through in different specific times and dates as you're going through the process.
Because in a beer, there are lots of nutrients in the malt, and you don't have to worry about feeding the yeast so much because they got plenty to eat. But they're with ciders and meads. All you've got is simple sugars, right? And they will practically starve to death and give you nasty tasting stuff if you don't feed them properly.
Yeah, and that's the principle behind all of the staggered nutrient addition, and it worked really well. And but this was like the second cider that I'd ever made. So on the first one, I'd use just a regular champagne yeast, but on this one, I went with the Belgian yeast, and the difference that I'd noticed was that the Belgian yeast, it just seemed to ferment forever. It was going on, and I'd go down and check it, and it was still bubbling and bubbling and bubbling.
So how long did it go?
Just looking at my notes here, I started primary in September and actually racked it off to secondary in February.
Of this year?
No, this was in 2008.
Oh, wow. Well, this is aged really, really well. How long has it been in the bottle?
I bottled it in, a year after I racked it into secondary.
Wow. Well, it reminds me of a white wine more than anything else. What do you think, Steve?
Yeah, it does, and I'm particularly impressed by the spiciness of it. It seems like it's got some black pepper notes that I really like, and I'm attributing that to the Belgian yeast.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, right. And I do have to say that I haven't had a bottle of this in probably 6 months, and since the last bottle I had, I've noticed that it's sort of toned back and mellowed a bit. So I was a bit surprised when I was tasting it this evening.
Mm-hmm. It's delicious. I'm not a wine guy, but it does taste like a white wine of sorts.
It's got it's got a little Chardonnay going on in there.
But it's very, very nice. I'm not getting a lot of brown sugar, and I'm not getting necessarily a lot of apple, which may be a good thing in this case.
Yeah, I get the apple, and I think that's where you get the wine taste from.
Really?
Yeah, I kind of get some apple in there for sure. But it's not. I've had other Cysers that were very apple.
Right.
I mean, they were like eating a candied apple.
Mm-hmm.
And this is still retains some residual sugar, and so in the same way that like a Chardonnay white wine would retain some residual sugar, but it's not. This is not particularly sweet,
mm-hmm.
and it's very light on my palate. And it finishes, kind of nice and spicy. This would be great as a dinner
mm-hmm.
drink.
And I'm not getting a lot of oxidation either.
Mm-mm.
This doesn't taste like it's been in the bottle for years. There's none of the kind of aged quality, I don't think. Maybe if we had tasted it fresh and compared it to now, maybe we would pick up some of that. But I'm not tasting this as an aged beverage.
Well, I'm usually careful when I'm racking that I flush the carboy with CO2 before I rack into the carboy,
Wow.
so that I try and avoid the oxygen in the carboy.
Huh. Well, that may have had something to do with it.
That's really dedication.
And cheers to you, Dave.
Yeah, no kidding.
We're using plastic glasses, or you would hear a tink.
You can hear that later on.
Well, but I take it that
You're going to edit that in?
yeah, exactly.
We don't know.
Our Foley guy when he comes in.
Yeah.
So, give us some more general background on your brewing experience. You say you're not. This was your second cider. What do you generally brew?
Well, beer and wine were my primary, and I've been brewing beer since 1990 and started winemaking in '95. So,
Wow.
The cider started because I remember in the old days there was a cider mill locally to where I grew up that used to make hard cider, and we used to buy it all the time. And I thought, well, shoot, I'm making beer now. I can do cider.
I can do that.
Yeah.
I can do that.
And you can. We're proof of that.
That's for sure.
So what other ciders have you made, or what other iterations of this? If you were to do this one again, what would you change?
Well, the brown sugar I used was a light brown sugar. I might go and try a dark brown sugar with it, and I don't know if that would change it. I'm sure it would change the color. And I'd often thought of trying it with just a champagne yeast or something.
Mm-hmm.
So just to try the flavors themselves of the ingredients rather than introducing a Belgian component to them. So I was thinking, as I've only got 3 bottles of this left, I thought maybe I'd make just do another batch and split it into maybe a 3-gallon batch of each, and do just a champagne yeast, and maybe another Belgian yeast, just to compare.
Now, you didn't stop the fermentation at any point with this, did you, and back sweeten it a little bit? And I'm going to
Nope.
say that no, you didn't.
No, this just went through.
Yeah.
And did I? I forgot. Let me look at my notes here a second. I don't think that. Oh, I did add sorbate at the end just to make sure that. But at that point, it was 2 years out.
Yeah.
So did you pasteurize your cider or honey going into it?
I did not. I just bought the 5-gallon jugs or the 1-gallon jugs, 5 1-gallon jugs from the cider mill and just poured them in. And
So
I did add metabisulfite.
Oh, okay.
As a sanitizer. And
Yeah. So hopefully you obviously killed any or dealt with any other bugs in there other than your Belgian yeast because it is very clean.
Yeah, it is. I think.
I was happy with the way it turned out.
Yeah, very nice.
Yeah, you should be really proud of this. I'm always amazed when I get to sample meads from different folks and just how really varied the flavors are.
Mm-hmm.
You know, and I think that's because the first time I ever had mead, it was just this sweet gloppy stuff that wasn't very well made. Some commercial. Mead,
Was that at my house?
Yes, it was. Actually, But then we started making meads, and you made the mead for my wedding that we toasted, and that was lovely. And we still have a couple bottles of that.
That's right. Now, actually, I think our first meads were for our friends Kyle and Laura's wedding.
That's right.
And I remember sitting around on their patio drinking this mead, thinking, we really don't have to make beer. This is really good.
Yeah.
But we continued making the beer, and thank goodness for that. But yeah, I mean, a good mead, it doesn't have to be something. And those were just honey and water, essentially,
yeah.
and yeast nutrient and such as that. But mead doesn't have to be complex. It can be simple. But, I mean, if you do things like add cider and brown sugar and funk it up a little bit with some Belgian yeast, you can really have some fun.
Yeah.
With the format, so to speak.
Yeah.
So
this is a kick to get to drink your Cyser, Dave. We really appreciate it.
Yeah, wonderfully done. So shall we move on to the next experiment? Is there anything else you want to say about that one before we move on?
Well, I think the only thing was that probably I wish that I would have sent you another sort of experiment that I did. Was actually started about a month later than this one, which was I made a mead with a Belgian ale yeast. And let's see, I'm looking at the recipe here. I used 14 pounds of wildflower honey, and I used Y yeast Belgian Saison.
Oh,
wow.
Y yeast, and I made it was a 5.5 gallons, and initially, and I split it into two separate batches after primary.
Mm-hmm. Steve's
Taking out that cork?
Yeah, that's the cork. Sorry about that, guys.
That's Steve's indigestion. That's what.
Actually, it's enhanced interrogation of this wine bottle, and it'll talk soon. I promise.
It's going to make us talk, I'm afraid. Sorry
and,
about that.
That's all right.
Actually, it's the fried rice I had for dinner. So I should be okay.
Now, Don Osborne says that we're always making digestive jokes, so we
got to back off from that.
We're just fitting the format.
Okay.
I just listened to that one today.
Well, you're up to speed. That's a good thing.
So what I did was I split the 5.5 gallons into two separate things, and one I left just plain, and the other I racked on to 14 pounds of pears that I had picked off the tree out in the front yard. And I added to that, in addition, I added some grated ginger. And so I'll have to send you one of each of those.
Ooh.
I'd completely forgotten about those when I sent this stuff down. Just too many covered, sealed boxes in the basement.
I know the feeling. You clean out the basement and, oh, yeah, there's that.
Holy cow, I completely forgot about that.
I hope that you label things better than I do because, I'll do experiments and I'll put like number 1, number 2, and number 3. And then I'll come back and, those that meant something at some point, but I have no idea what that is. So now we've got the meads poured. Mm-hmm. Now one is.
Oh, okay.
Now tell us about the recipe for these.
All right. On the meads, this was my very first batch of mead, and I'd been researching a lot of it all the time, and I wanted to just try different things and see what I liked. And when I went to the homebrew shop, they said, well, what do you want, a sweet mead yeast or a dry mead yeast? And
you said yes.
Exactly. And so what I did was I made 2 separate 5-gallon batches of mead that were exactly the same except for the yeast. One was a sweet, one was a dry. And from there, after primary, I split the 5 gallons into separate 5 1-gallon portions, and to each of those I flavored them separately so that I used, and these are all either real fruits or spices and whatever. So I used blueberry, I used Japanese plum, apricot, a vanilla bean, and cinnamon, which is the one that you have, and one which is the quality control reference standard. I left just the plain mead.
Yeah. So we have a vanilla bean and cinnamon sweet and dry in front of us.
And dry.
So which one should we go for first?
I think probably the one that's closest in terms of mouthfeel and whatever to the cider is the Cyser is the dry.
Okay.
And that's actually how you do a wine tasting anyway. You'd move from dry to sweet.
There you go. Cheers.
Cheers. And you did hear the tink on that.
I did hear that one. You've abandoned the plastic?
Yeah, we've upscaled.
All right.
It was
Very
a double.
Nice. Yeah. Very nice. Now it is.
It's slightly effervescent.
Yeah. Well, you can definitely get I definitely get the vanilla.
Oh yeah. And
the
cinnamon.
And the cinnamon is in the nose as well.
Oh yeah.
Now it is. I don't know if I'd say dry, but it's there's a little bit of alcohol heat.
Yeah.
In there.
Mm-hmm.
Now, how old are these?
I started these in 2008 as well. It was a good year for playing with things.
Yeah, no kidding. It is very, very nice, very tasty. Like I say, there's a little. If I could pick on it, I would say that there's a little bit of alcohol heat in there.
Yeah, but that doesn't bother me.
After the second sip, it bothers me less.
Well, it was 14 pounds of honey in a 5-gallon bag.
That was actually a question that I'd hoped you would answer. Was
Yeah.
how many pounds of honey you put in. So and So both batches had 14 pounds.
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah, and it was just wildflower honey, just a local wildflower honey. So, and again, I did the staggered nutrient addition on this as well.
Mm-hmm. Now, how did the character of the mead change over time? Did you sample over time?
I did.
Is this all? Dave, is this all that's left?
Well, pretty much. I was trying to decide what to do with it, and
well, drinking was a good option.
Drinking was a good option.
Yeah.
I dragged a lot of friends down into my fermenting room down in the basement and said, "Here, try this." And now try this. And what do you think? And I was just looking for different opinions of sweet, dry, whatever. So why don't you now try the sweet version of this?
Now I'm just holding up the glasses, and the sweet version has more legs, as they say in the wine industry. It is more viscous. It leaves more on the glass as you tilt it.
Yep.
And tilt it right back up. And now let's. Ooh, that smells good. Smells a bit like the other. Oh my,
that's really good. I really like the sweet one.
Now there is a night. Well, it's not night and day, but as far as the mouthfeel,
you are the one.
Stop singing. We'll have to pay royalties.
Can we do that as a bossa nova?
Why Steve is a drummer?
That's right. I couldn't carry a mead in a bucket. Anyway,
now that is tasty.
I like the dry, but I like the sweeter component. I mean, this just really hits home.
Yeah. Now the this does not have the alcohol bite. That I got with the other one. It is very sweet. And did you? Do you have a note of the finishing gravities of these two?
Finishing gravities. Yeah. Wait a minute.
Wow.
Original was 1.202.
Oh my goodness!
Wow.
And final, was 0.97. 0.997.
0.997.
Say that again in English?
No, it's below 1.0, so it's 0.997. On both of them, or they can't have finished the same.
They were close. I didn't
really. Wow.
Just looking at the dry. It's the dry that the 0.997. For some reason, I didn't record.
I'm going to say it's higher on the sweet.
I'm going to say it's higher for sure.
Because there is a substantial difference in the mouthfeel.
Yeah.
And it is sweet.
Now, you did recommend that we blend.
Yes, you should. You should blend them, and that's what I ultimately did when I was done, because I took about a half a gallon of each of the two different ones and blended them together.
Okay.
And it seemed to be, and it was just a guess, and it seemed to be a nice sort of medium.
Yeah. Double tink.
That's very nice.
Yeah.
Yeah, I would say that is a nice compromise. Yeah. So we've learned about the different effects of the different yeasts. We've learned about blending. We've learned about patience.
That's right.
because these were born or at least conceived in 2008.
Well,
oh my.
part of that,
It's really nice.
part of that is that I travel for work, and that these things they sit in the basement, and it's fine.
Can I ask what's the ambient temperature down there? What are they stored at?
It's 55 to 65, somewhere in there, depending on the season.
Yeah. Very nice. If there is anything that you would tell beer brewers who are listening to this podcast, what did you think was out of all your research, what was the most important thing to focus on when you're doing a mead or a Cyser or a cider, something that is not beer?
Good question.
That's what I'm good at. Giving answers, not so much.
I don't know. I mean, I sort of like to try different things. I don't necessarily like everything to be cut and dry. So what I try, I mean, I might even try this experiment using with all the different fruit additions. Do it with a Belgian ale yeast, or throw in some Brett. Who knows?
That would be very interesting.
Yeah, there you go. Yeah, especially after that Don Osborne episode.
So maybe the advice is to be brave.
Yeah.
Just trust your senses and your sense of how things go together. And as a beer brewer, as you gain experience brewing beer, you gain experience knowing what those yeasts will do and what they taste like and how they'll bring a certain character to your beer. How fun to try that with honey.
Or
exactly.
apple juice.
Or apple juice.
Yeah.
Which is the Cyser. I saw that recipe and I said, Belgian yeast. Let's give this a try.
That's why I love home brewing. You can't,
absolutely.
You can't buy something exactly like this in the store. Well, Dave, this has been a lot of fun, and I'm so grateful for you taking time and for sending us these wonderful things that we will now. We've got some left, and we're going to pop the corks back on, and we may have to get together for a dinner or something. And
I believe so.
Share these.
Yeah.
Well, Dave,
I will send you a couple bottles of that Belgian yeast pear mead that I had talked about.
Awesome. That would be very nice. We appreciate it, Dave.
Well, you're welcome.
Well, thanks again to Dave and to Steve. It's been way too long since I made a mead. And those were some tasty examples and mighty inspirational, might I say. Maybe June will be the month to make a mead or two. Remember, after next week, we'll be off the air, so to speak, until July. So don't panic if you don't see us in a couple of Thursdays from now. If you have brewing questions in the meantime, show suggestions, or just want to say howdy, write to james@basicbrewing.com, or just fill out the contact form on basicbrewing.com, and please don't forget to tell us where you're from. You can find our DVDs on our website, Basic Brewing, Extract Brewing and Partial Mashing, Stepping into All Grain, Low-Tech Lagering and Decoction Mashing, and Introduction to Wine Kits, along with our 2011 Brewers Logbooks. We've got combo deals to save you a few bucks if you want to buy more than one DVD at a time. And we got shirts, too. You can see a listing of the fine folks across the country who sell our DVDs on basicbrewing.com. And if there isn't a vendor in your area, you can order them online in our online shop at basicbrewingshop.com. Thanks to everybody who's continued to click on our Amazon.com link. We appreciate the support there. Our featured products this week that were purchased through the link are A Bird in the Oven and Then Some. 20 ways to roast the perfect chicken plus 80 delectable recipes. And Hamilton Beach single-serve blender with 2 jars and 2 lids. Thanks again, everybody. Remember, I can't tell who bought what, so no worries there. Just click on the Amazon.com logo on our site the next time you feel like Amazon shopping. We greatly appreciate your support. And don't forget, you can also join the American Homebrewers Association or subscribe to Brew Your Own magazine through the associate link on basicbrewing.com, too. That's all until next week. Until then, thanks for listening. I'm James Spencer. Production help for Basic Brewing Radio and our website is provided by Kelly Dotson down in Austin, Texas. Basic Brewing Radio is a production of Active Voicing. We'll talk to you next time, everybody. So long.